So another week, another episode of Silo. We get a lot of, well, not a lot happening this week. We get some new plot twists and some definite foreshadowing of things to come. But it's more focused about life in the silo and how it works, that it's levels within levels here. Feel a little repetitive of last week's episode at times with the murder, especially the Marnes investigation, feeling like just another spin on what we've seen with the mayor the week before. That's not to say it's a bad episode. I like what it's setting up more than what's happening in it. I think the show just needs to give us a reveal or two, even a small one. But anyway, let's get to it. So, first of all, before we do, I just want to say thanks for taking the time to choose to watch this video. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't done it already, or you're a return visitor, please subscribe to the channel. It's only a small click for you, but it means the entire world to me. And if you make it to the end of the video, leave a like. So opens where last week left off with Jules looking at George's file. That's not a question that comes up in the show. What is why Holson decided to hide George's file, because, as Julliette says, there's nothing in it that she didn't already know. But all this is interrupted when she finds out Marnes' fate from last week, and it seems his attacker did get the better of him. This is where it does get a little bit samey like the mayor's plot, because even the way that the murder scene is shot is pretty much identical to the mayor's one, in that there's three people round the body having a discussion in the room about what's going to happen next. So Jules has a tough few days on her hands. Holson, the mayor, and now Marnes are all dead, and Bernard is worried how this will affect life in the silo. And okay, this is a pretty huge scene, I think, if not for the show, but definitely for Bernard. We learn a lot about his character here. He says that he always suspected there was something between the Marnes and the mayor, so he decides to change the narrative and tell the public that we're in love to take focus off the murder. He even says that they need a distraction.
Why would the mayor do that?
So it becomes the story, Rob. We need a distraction.
Now, the reason I think this is such a big deal is, one, Bernard lets us know that he always suspected about the Marnes and mayor affair, and I think that he 100% knew about it. I think he's just acting coy so he doesn't give away his hand and he doesn't seem like he's pushing his agenda too much. And two, the way that he mentions changing the narrative and shifting the story.
No, let's push the story that they were in love.
And this is exactly what's happened to the people in the silo after the rebellion. They don't know their own past or culture. And the ease and how quickly he comes up with this idea shows that it isn't the first time he's done it, or at least it's a well-practiced behaviour where he comes from. He then decides to do a PR distraction and create a race to help people sort of elevate themselves in the silo in Mayor Jons' name. So yeah, this guy is more of a game player than the people around him are aware of. Like I said at the start of the video, we'll learn more about life in the silo. We find out, first of all, at the funeral that there's just over 10,000 people inside. And I'll get back to that figure in a moment. The speech that he gives at the joint funeral for them is awkward as hell. Like, that delivery is just really strange. But if you ignore that, the real takeaway from the funeral scene here is no one seems to have any sort of religious faith or belief. There's no symbols like a cross or talk of a god or afterlife, which is incredibly interesting. That's a sort of core human belief, and it's not the first time in this episode or the last that we're going to find out that there's things that we take for granted as part of our sort of culture or heritage that the silo has just, well, it's no longer there, let's just put it that way. And by the way, all this happens before the credits have even rolled. It's about 15 minutes, so if you like long intros, leave a like, because I'm doing one too. Now, in my last video, I said that Jules' new assistant Sandy knows more than she's letting on, and she confirms this when she confronts her about the real reason that Jules wanted to become sheriff to solve George's murder. So Sandy wants Jules to solve Marnes' murder, and remember, Jules also promised Marnes to solve the mayor's murder while she's still trying to solve George's murder herself. So, I'll be honest, at this stage I was like, it feels like the show should be called Only Murderers in the Building, because that's what it is. When I said we get a glimpse at life in the silo, I mean sort of how the higher ups work, because it seems that Sims and Bernard are trying to frame someone for the murder, and in doing so set them up and also set Jules up to fail as well. Billings, who's the new sort of second in command under Jules, wants to move to that department with Sims. And when he tells her, and he sort of mentions that, you know, there's like informants or spies that report to Judicial, the way that he describes it, it seems like they're sort of the CIA at best, or a secret police at worst, working for, you know, quote, the good of the silo. So yeah, these guys have probably done some shady shit in the past that's going to come out. He also interrupts Sims when he's with Trumbull, who killed Marnes in the last episode as well. So yeah, Judicial and Sims at least have got their hands into some dirty business. And Sims sets up a few mysteries about what the real power of Judicial is here. In the meantime, as I said, they're trying to set up Jules for a fall so Billings can take over and therefore sort of Sims can run the same department. So yeah, we're seeing how life in the silo works on different levels. People are always trying to advance or control who advances, and this goes all the way back to episode 1 with Ali discovering about her implant. Anyway, Jules manages to track down the real guy, Trumbull, who's responsible, and gives chase. And this is all going on while the race to the top event is happening as well. And this for me was the weakest part of the episode. The chase felt like it was too long, and her hanging on there went too long as well once he knocked her over the edge. But anyway, Trumbull gets away and runs straight to Sims, who's obviously his boss. And Sims has hinted at earlier on in the episode that Trumbull might be working under him to train to be his replacement like Billings is to Jules. But when he shows up, Trumbull doesn't mention the chase or how he injured his hand getting away from Jules, and I thought that's very interesting why that's not really getting mentioned. And Sims gives us an expo dump on his past, finding out when he was a teen how Judicial worked and that his father had some sort of hand in it, although publicly he was a janitor. So when he's younger, he's learned some mysterious secret about the silo. He just says they do the most important work in the silo. Now, we've heard the good of the silo mentioned, the most important work in the silo. I think what these guys are doing is ensuring the continuity of life or existence. Anyway, Sims confirms that we all knew that Trumbull killed Marnes and the mayor and George, but he did say that killing George was a mistake, but not why. Maybe it's because the attention that it's going to draw, I don't know. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And with everyone thinking that George and Trumbull committed suicide, the murderer is now dead and they've just got 2 suicides on their hands, so life in the silo can sort of go back to normal, I guess. Sandy hands her resignation to Jules to go to a lower level. Now Marnes' murder has been solved, she says that she's always felt like she's being watched up top. And again, as I mentioned at the start of the video, I think that's some foreshadowing. Bernard admits he was wrong about appointing Jules sheriff after she's resolved all this, and she asks him for a few days off to help move her life from down the bottom to up top. Now, just like last week, there's another scene with Lucas. That's the Shakespeare guy who raised a few questions for me. If you haven't watched my 3D video on the silo, by the way, check it out. There will be a link in the description at the end of this video as well. But it reveals more interesting aspects of, let's say, life in the silo, or at least how they perceive life outside the silo. But anyway, Jules goes back down to the mechanical to collect her things and her thoughts, and ends up speaking to Martha, who she left the camcorder with, and asks her if she's noticed the stars or lights as they call them in the sky. But this conversation has another level. Martha warns Jules about what might happen if she starts asking questions, or if people were to question their life in the silo en masse, i.e. another rebellion. Martha's been trying to work out what the camcorder's for, but isn't having much luck. She knows it's a device with optical zoom, because as we find out, optical zoom's actually a big deal in the silo. Because they live by what's called the Pact, and this seems somewhere between a law and something like the US Constitution. They don't go fully into the details of what's in the pact, but explicitly it does ban elevators and devices that can magnify beyond a certain amount, and Martha has spent a lot of time thinking about this, and yeah, so have I. Because I don't know how they're going to use the camcorder. The fact they've mentioned the lens, I don't think they could use it to magnify the stars. They could probably stick it on a stick or some sort of mechanical robot or something like that if they had it, and stick it outside and get it back. And the episode ends with Jules going back down into the tunnel in order to get the Pez dispenser, because she wants to use a relic to lure someone out in order that she can continue to investigate the George situation, because everyone else thinks it's a suicide. And I'll be honest, I don't think the Pez dispenser is the item she needs, but she's definitely going to use one of the relics to help get the truth out. So, as I said, we got a lot of info about the silo and life in the silo this week. The population, the fuel, the pact. Also the syndrome got mentioned, but they didn't elaborate on what that is or how you catch it. And we're getting to see how life below the surface of the silo works. And yeah, I don't mean that as a pun, it's just really hard to talk about things being below the surface in this show. But anyway. And while we get a sense of where Jules is going to go to next, we get a few more mysteries here. What's behind Sims's door? Why don't they know what stars are? All very big things. Because not knowing what, Coca-Cola or an iPhone is one thing, but not knowing what a star is, that's actually huge, because everyone on Earth is aware of them. But as I said, this and a few other things and points from this episode are something that I'm going to bring up in my theory videos, and that's going to be dropping tomorrow. So make sure you've got notifications turned on and you're subscribed to the channel. And if you've made it this far, as always, please leave a like. My name's Al, and remember, don't say you want to go outside.